Okay, on to a little bit more serious topics today. They're all going to time in together, and Tiberius, if you're watching this, you better put them in series properly, otherwise they're going to contextually make no sense. The first one, we're going to talk about rights, because people like to claim they have rights that don't exist. I have the right to collective bargaining. No, you don't. You have the right to free speech, and you have the right to free assembly. These are part of collective bargaining, but guess what, folks? Nobody has to listen, nobody has to pay attention, nobody has to agree. That doesn't mean that you can't just form a little group together and decide, we want to tell you our grievances. But it does mean that if a state or a corporation says, hey, fuck you, they get to do that, okay? You may not like it, you may decide to strike, whatever, but it doesn't matter, because the point is it doesn't exist in the U.S. Constitution, and those are the only rights that count. This is a very broad sense of what people like to talk about. They like to talk as though they have the right to be this, they have the right to do that. No, the rights are enumerated in the Constitution, and all of the rights are basically either given to the states to dispose of as they seem fit, or to the individuals who form the government of the country. The first three rights aren't even in the amendments, okay? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life doesn't mean you get free health care, okay? Life does not mean that we, the people, are responsible to whether or not you survive tomorrow. What it means is that you have the right to exist without threat. In other words, folks, if I come paste you, I violated your rights. If I told you I'm going to paste you, I haven't, okay? If you get pasted and I won't pay for your bills, guess what? I didn't violate your rights. Hey, bad things happen to good people in the world all the time. Take me, for instance. You were watching this right now. You must be good people. I'm the bad thing. Okay? Liberty. Basically, in a nutshell, what it means is that, once again, you're free from threats. People can't sanction you for going about and doing what you see to be right in the world as long as you don't infringe on other people's rights. In the pursuit of happiness, people have tried to translate that into all certain things, but it really comes down to this. You have the right to accumulate wealth. Yeah, you socialist bastards, capitalism is inside the U.S. Constitution. Catch up to the rest of us. You don't like it? Add an amendment. If you think there's a right to privacy, guess what? It's not in the U.S. Constitution. The 9 wise magi of the Supreme Court, a bunch of lawyers in black robes, and let's face facts, has anybody met a lawyer that wasn't slimy? These guys are the ones that found that right because they were trying to find a way to legalize abortion. Hey, that's for the Congress to decide, you dumb bastards. You don't believe me? Article 3 of the Constitution gives the Congress of the United States the right to tell you to go fuck off, you're wrong. You don't believe me? The Defense of Marriage Act includes a clause that prevents the federal courts from visiting it, taking a case involving it, or adjudicating any law in regards to the Defense of Marriage Act. Because that particular point the law was put in, the courts can't even look at it. That's the truth, that's the way it works. So Congress, when you say that the courts actually have done something you can't reverse, you're full of shit and we all know it. Here's the other thing that bothers me about rights. People are always willing to impugn them. Hey, there's a bunch of idiots running around the country right now, and they're part of this church, and they're basically saying because the United States is willing to endure gay people, that's why we're losing in foreign wars, and they're going to soldiers' funerals, and they're protesting. A lot of people are saying you're violating that family's rights. No, the family can turn around and flip them off, okay? Now, I'm not saying this behavior is good. I was a soldier. Everybody knows that I'm going to be coming down on the family side. But the First Amendment must be held absolute. If these people are going to assemble and speak, you gotta let them do it. Now, there are some things that you can do, like say you have to be so many thousands of feet away or something along those lines in order to give those grieving people some sort of a reprieve. But don't expect the Supreme Court to tell them they can't do it. And I'm going to tell you why. The minute those people can't speak anymore, you folks can't speak anymore. And the most important part of the right of speech has nothing to do with what you say or whether or not people agree with you. We have to have this right around. Because as long as people feel comfortable telling the world how stupid they are, we'll get an opportunity to figure it out for ourselves before they come into power and do something horrible like the Nazis did in Germany. That freedom of speech has done a lot to keep our government together and free for all of us. The other one that everybody has contention with, the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms. Congress shall not write no law. Look it up. This is the linchpin to the rest of our rights, folks. Let me share something with you. If a foreign power is going to invade the United States, it's not just the military they're worried about. Make no mistake about it. Military planners take a look at it and says, there's enough guns on the streets to arm every man, woman, and child in that country. There's no way we're going to get that far. Let me tell you something. The second line of defense in our nation, after they get past our Coast Guard, isn't the cops. It's the G's rolling around in the hoods carrying their 9 sideways, okay? Nobody wants to come up against those guys because they're freaking crazy and they might be hopped up on crack. You never know. Point of the matter is this. Just because you feel you should have a right doesn't mean it exists. Just because we have allowed certain behaviors to propagate throughout our society does not mean that you have that right. And another great important thing to remember about rights is even if you don't believe in God, this country has to believe in God. It has to be written in the Constitution, and here's why. If you have a divine right at birth to free speech, free assembly, the ability not to testify against yourself, to not be compelled to testify your spouse, and all the other types of rights that you see in the amendments in the constitutional body, that means the government only has 2 choices. If you have a divine right given by God, the government can choose to recognize that right or not. Our Constitution recognizes those rights, but if they're granted by the Constitution and granted by the government, and pay attention when people speak, because it makes a huge difference. That means the government and the people in it can take that right away. Don't ever let them do it. Don't ever let them take God out of the law. It should be some sort of vague concept rather than a particular religion. First Amendment covered that one too. And most importantly of all, don't pretend you have frickin' rights that you don't, because I'm getting pissed off, and that may not mean a big deal to you, but that's only because you're not right in front of me right now. I'm Uncle Mitch, and that is all.